Welcome to day 5 of our Simply Autumn Art series. Today we'll be painting an apple pie in watercolor. We're going to keep it simple with beginner-friendly layers and just some subtle pen details at the end to give it that classic line and wash look. No sketching to start off with. We're just going to jump right in and start painting. Let's start with our dish. I am laying down a mixture of sap green and aqua green, kind of leaning heavier on the sap green. And then I'll drop in some darker green here in a little bit for shadows and variation. And don't worry about making it perfect. You can stay loose, you can stay uneven. You can see I gave it a little curvy line at the top there for an interesting shape of our dish, and the way I see most ceramic pie dishes. Okay, so I have quite a bit of water on here. I've wanted a nice diluted mixture here to start with. And then, like I said, I'll add some shadows and shading in a little bit. And you may be thinking, this is not a very traditionally autumn color, but it's okay. We're not officially in autumn, although in my imagination we are. I'm imagining crisp, cozy fall days, but the reality is it's going to be in the 90s here on Saturday. So, okay, while that is still wet, we are going to add some more of this color, a little bit less water, just letting it blend together. And it's just doing the wet on wet just keeps everything nice and soft. And you can see it just flows nicely, it blends nicely. And for me, for some reason, the wet on wet technique is just super relaxing. I love watching everything just blend together. All right, now we've let this dry completely, and I'm going to come in wet on dry. And so what this does is it just makes the colors richer every time you layer. Technically, wet on wet is also layering, but when you let it dry first and add a wet layer, it's going to just add richness and depth to our painting. And so still just using the same colors, you can see how it darkens it up. I am using a little bit less water as well, which is why it's also darkening it up. But yeah, so I'm just kind of fixing the bottom of the dish here and just kind of crisping up the edges of it. And I'm going to leave a little bit of a lighter section on here just to give that reflective look to the dish. And if you like that, you can do that as well. Remember, this is your painting, so choose your favorite color or colors, leave reflective spots or not. If you're more comfortable just doing exactly what I'm doing, that's great. It's a great place to be. And then when you feel a little bit more brave to branch out a little bit, you can experiment with different colors and shading and that sort of thing. I'm just kind of blending in here. I've fussed way too much with the bottom of the dish here, so I'm just speeding that up. I just went back and forth and back and forth. And wet on wet here with these 2 layers, I'm just going back in. I told you this is a relaxing part for me when I do wet on wet. I love just the smoothness of it and the softness of it. So I'm continuing with that, but you can stop whenever it looks good to you. After all, that is part of the fun of art. You get to decide what your pie looks like, what your pie dish looks like. Maybe yours is a completely different color or multiple colors. And maybe yours is fancier than mine or less fussy than mine. You just have fun with it. And if you're really new to watercolor, I suggest starting small. So I did a challenge back in May, and we used 3 by 3 inch pieces of paper. And that was just so approachable and just so doable. And yeah, I would suggest that to you if you're looking for suggestions. All right, now we are going to paint our pie. True confession, I have never had apple pie, nor do I want to have apple pie, but I think they're pretty to look at. So this is yellow ochre that I am starting with here, and you can see I'm just kind of doing a wavy little crust, and we're going to be adding some details later. This might get washed out a little bit as we go. And now I've just got water on my brush. I've cleaned my brush off, water, and I'm just touching it up into the outline of our pie crust, which brings some of that color down into the pie, giving a nice, very light yellow ochre wash throughout the pie crust. And by the way, I am using Winsor & Newton paints, and I'm using a size 6 brush up to this point. I always do my best to remember to put my supplies, list them in the description. But if I ever forget and you have a question, just leave me a comment or shoot me an email. And while this is still wet, we're doing some more wet on wet. I've got more yellow ochre on my brush, and I'm just tapping it in because I want our crust to look, ooh, I always want to say realistic. I'm never going for realistic. This is obviously an illustrative painting. We're not going for a realistic apple pie, but I want it to look like it's been baked and it's got varying colors, and that's just what a pie looks like, you know? So I'm still just tapping it in here and there and giving it a nice golden coverage here. And I'm trying to be really careful bringing that crust down really close to our pie dish. I definitely don't want any white showing in between the crust and the dish because I want the crust to kind of be coming over the dish a little bit. And just continuing to tap. And now I've added some burnt sienna to my brush. Just kind of adding a little bit of warmth to our pie and a little bit, spots here and there that are a little more well done. I know I'm probably not using proper pie baking vocabulary, but that's okay. You know what I mean. I'm just confident that you know what I mean. Blending some things. I've decided to switch over to a size 2 from my size 6 because I want to get really close to the dish without activating that green. So I don't think I've mentioned the importance of having that dish completely dry before we paint in our crust, because if the green was wet, it would just be bleeding right up into our pie. And I, for one, do not want that to happen. Okay, so continuing with my size 2 brush and some burnt sienna, tapping it in where I think maybe it would show that it baked a little bit darker. And I'm saying that as a person who does not bake pies. I have baked pies. Back in the day, I baked a lot of things. Pies were not something I baked often. So anyway, and I did not use a reference photo for this, so I'm really just kind of going with what is in my mind for an apple pie. All right, I have let this completely dry, and now I'm going to paint in some vents, and I'm using a diluted burnt umber for the vents. And you don't have to overthink it. You don't have to be too careful with these. People will know that they're vents if you just do a few loose marks up there. And now I'm coming in with a micron size 5, and I'm using the color brown, and I'm just going to outline our pie and add some little details here and there. Right now, just outlining and scratching those pen marks in there. Here's a fun idea for you. Wouldn't this make a cute illustrated recipe card? Like if you or someone you know has, a famous pie recipe, a famous in your family or whatnot, you could paint the pie like this and then write out the recipe card around it or beside it, whatever, and give it as a gift. I think that would be so sweet and just a thoughtful keepsake that somebody could have. And you could do it for yourself. That would be nice. And then it would get passed on to future generations. Okay, I might be overthinking this, but I think that's a sweet little idea. And did I mention that it's very important that the paint is completely dry before we start our pen details? Otherwise, it would just be bleeding right into the paint and it would be a little bit of a mess. I am using waterproof fine liners here. However, that does not mean that you can just use them in water. It just means basically that if you were to sketch first and then you let your pen completely dry, then you can paint over them. Okay, just adding in a little bit of detail, a little bit of outlining of our vents. Yeah, just scratch in those lines to your heart's content. And you may have noticed I did outline the whole thing. You certainly don't have to. You can just scratch in lines here and there. In fact, that's what I'm doing in the pie right now, is just scratching in a few little lines to give some more texture to the pie crust. And I'm thinking it's looking pretty yummy, even though I still do not want apple pie, but that's okay. I love the smell of it. I love the coziness of it. Right now, I'm just adding in some lines to our dish to give that a little bit of texture, and it gives it a little more shape as I'm slanting. I did that center line straight, and then I kind of slanted on either side of that line. And now that that's completely dry, I am going to come in with our white gel pen. Again, supplies will be listed in the description with links if you're interested. Now, I just thought the dish got a little too dark for my liking, so I'm just adding my white gel pen to add a little bit of variation. This part I contemplated adding steam because I'm like, is that goofy? Is that too whatever? I want to say childish. I don't think that's the word, but I actually kind of like it. I think it's kind of charming. So you can choose to leave that in or out. Again, I'm picturing this on a recipe card. I think somebody should do it. And if you do, I want to see it. So shoot me an email or tag me on Instagram. Okay, for our shadow, I am using Payne's Gray and just put a little Payne's Gray down and then added some water to my brush, and I am just spreading it out a little bit. Do you see that little brown spot right there on the left side under the dish? Well, I just dried my brush off so I could wipe that up. That means that I didn't really let my pen dry enough. So that brown micron pen that is waterproof, I didn't let it dry. And so therefore it bled right into my paint. No big deal. We just fix our mistakes, you know? It works out. I added a little bit more Payne's Gray to cover up that spot that left a little bit of a brown mark there. And all is good. And just like that, we are finished with our watercolor apple pie. And remember, this is day 5 of our series so far. And so if you've missed any of the previous days, be sure to check out the playlist that I've made. I've got everything organized in there for you. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications if you don't want to miss our future paintings. Day 6 is coming up on Friday. Hope to see you then.